Welcome to Heaping Spoonful, a twice-monthly conversation with restaurateurs, chefs, growers, and others who have helped generate the legends associated with eateries across the Mid-South. The team at Benny Keith is proud to sponsor this adventure with the goal of preserving the stories that have helped cultivate an amazing food scene across the Mid-South. So kick back and enjoy a Heaping Spoonful.
Greetings to everybody and welcome to Heaping Spoonful. I'm Kelly Bass, and it's my pleasure, after decades of writing about restaurants for Little Rock newspapers and magazines, to be the host of this podcast and just talk about restaurants and the people who make them great. Our goal is to cast the spotlight on chefs and restaurateurs from across the Mid-South, and today we're chatting with Patrick Reilly, owner and chef at Majestic Grille in downtown Memphis, Tennessee. So welcome, Patrick.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So the first question has to be, how did a guy like you end up in a place like this, meaning an Irishman and an already very accomplished chef putting down roots in Memphis, of all places?
Well, it was in 2000, and I was approached by the Gibson Guitar Company to open what was going to become the Lounge. Was a series of showcases for the Gibson guitar instruments to showcase their instruments, and it was a live music venue and restaurants. And I was in Orlando at the time, had just finished up with the Planet Hollywood Hard Rock sort of people, and so that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, cool. And then I'm sure then you thought that was just a one trick gig, and you were going to get the Gibson thing up and rolling, and then that was the end of that. But what decided to make you want to stay in Memphis?
Well, I tell people I came to Memphis for the weekend. I never left, and it's not untrue. I was going through a lot of change, and it seemed like a really nice. It was a great opportunity, Memphis, and Memphis was just very welcoming to me. Everybody that I met was friendly and took me in and brought me around to meet people, and I just made a lot of friends, and I just felt like it was a great opportunity to put down some new roots, and here we are.
Yeah, well, that Southern hospitality is a famous thing, and it's real, and so it's nice that you felt welcomed. And we're going to talk more in a little bit about your wife Danny's and your contributions to downtown Memphis and the local culinary scene. But let's go back across the ocean, and so you're a young man. In growing up in Ireland, how did you ever get interested in being a chef in the first place? What sparked that interest?
Well, I'd always sort of wanted to cook. I've cooked since I was a small boy, so at home and all. It seemed to pique my interest. So after high school, I applied to a culinary school and got accepted, and there we were, off to the races. So.
Yeah. Was that there in Dublin or in Ireland? Or
yeah, it's now the Dublin Institute of Technology, but at the time it was the College of Catering and Hotel Management.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And did and then your bio, which you have the Majestic Grille has an excellent website, so it makes a podcaster's job easy to be able to do that research. So you had an apprenticeship in the executive dining room at the Guinness Brewery. Was that pretty much right out of culinary school, or did you do things in between?
No, that was right out. That was an apprenticeship. In Europe, there's an apprenticeship program where you go to school and then you work as an apprentice, and then you serve your time, and then you get your qualifications after your apprenticeship is over. And at the time, the Guinness Brewery had a massive in-house catering operation, and they would bring in chefs that were quite well established in the hotels and the restaurants in the industry. And they would sort of come and bring their talents to this massive dining room where we were feeding, upwards of 1,000, 1,500 people a day. But we also had, it was a huge operation, but we also had a director's room, an executive dining room, a lot of banquet facilities. And and it was an interesting, very classic. We made everything from scratch in house. We made ice creams and Christmas cakes and plum puddings at Christmas, and it was a fascinating, when I look back. And it's not like that anymore. I mean, it's no longer done in house. I think they sub it all out to Aramark or one of those big catering companies. But back in the day, it was an in-house, an amazing place to learn the basics of sort of classic French cookery.
Right, and what a great place to apply what you were learning at the time in culinary school. So yeah, real world experience. Because again, everybody in the United States. I was just in Memphis this weekend for my 40th college reunion from Rhodes College. And
oh gosh,
yeah, I know. Whew, you hang around long enough, you get old if you're lucky. So,
well, it beats the alternative.
Yeah, it definitely does. So, and I actually was sitting in a bar downtown, and they had Guinness on tap. But I think most people here think about Guinness strictly as a beer or a family of beers. But clearly, they had a huge culinary presence at that point in time too. So, your bio pretty succinctly and matter-of-factly mentions your time in New York, Boston, Orlando, and at a Michelin-starred restaurant in London that was named for Google tells me is the first significant architect in England. So let's just kind of walk through those steps. You mentioned what you were doing in Orlando, but let's talk about New York, Boston, and London, and what you were doing there, and kind of what led you there.
Well, London was the epicenter of sort of food at the time. It was in the early '80s. It was the mid '80s. It was the height of the Nouvelle cuisine craze. And I moved to London. I had family there. My sister lived there. And it was a pretty standard thing for people in our business, especially in Ireland, to just go to you pack a bag and off you go.
Right.
Find your way in the world. And a lot of people that I went to college with, a lot of people that I went to high school with, we're friends now on social media, and we're in points east and west of Australia and Vermont and, Saudi Arabia. I mean, all over. But
right.
I moved to London. It was the first step to sort of broaden my horizons once I finished my apprenticeship. And I went to work at a restaurant called Ménage à Trois, which was a very hip and fancy restaurant. It was actually featured on the Crown TV show a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, didn't see that coming. But it was very hip and trendy, and I worked there for about a year and a half. Still stay in touch with the chef there, David Wilby, who owns a really nice restaurant just outside of London. And our last trip to London, we caught up and had dinner. We still talk, so it's been a long-term friendship. And then I worked there, and then I moved to the aforementioned Inigo Jones, which was named after the architect that built Covent Garden, actually.
Wow!
And I believe he designed the Opera House. I could be wrong about that, but I know he designed Covent Garden, and that was a very elevated, very fine dining, very French. Although the chef, Paul Gale, was English, spoke French. Fabulously talented crew of people. Just learned so much. Worked there for about a year, and then was approached by the Ménage à Trois people to help open the Ménage à Trois New York outpost. So I was sort of recruited back by them. And off I went to New York. That's what got you to the United
States, right?
So I went to New York.
Open that one?
So I went to New York, and I spent a year and a half there, and just fell in love with it. Just the whole. I mean, it was New York in the 80s, so it was a lot of fun, and I was in my 20s, so
sure. Yeah,
it's a combination.
Was it right
there, and then I moved
Manhattan,
back to London, and I started to work for the my friend David had opened a restaurant with a guy called Robert Earl, who had just bought the Hard Rock Cafes. And I worked for Robert in London for a few months, and then he asked me to go to Boston to run a restaurant there for him. And one thing led to another, and I sort of spent the next 10 years working for his organization at the Hard Rocks and some fine dining restaurants that we had, and then eventually at the Planet Hollywood.
Yeah, because when I think about fine dining, I don't think about Planet Hollywood or Hard Rock, but I guess you did your best to make that food exceptional.
Well, in fairness, I mean, nowadays it's a whole different story now. But back in the day, Hard Rock used to grind its own beef and make its own French fries and make all our salad dressings in house. And we had these massive smoke. I mean, it was my first introduction to pulled pork. And Planet was the same. I mean, when we opened Planet in New York, it really was culinarily, elevated. Certainly, it was still hamburgers and steaks, but it was it was good quality product. It was on a par with something like a Houston's would be, for instance, now.
Right. Yeah. Again, I think it's just the perception is of something that maybe it is more now, but it wasn't then. So, okay. Well, now we've got you with that same company in Orlando, and then you got to Memphis and did the Gibson guitar gig. Was there much lag time between when you left there and when you opened Majestic Grille? Did you have other roles in Memphis, or was it straight from one to the other?
Well, not really. I mean, there was a gap. I did some consulting work and helped out some people, but basically it was, I jumped from one to the other. Right. So it was, and that was really my two sort of main things.
Sure. And so you opened Majestic Grille in 2006, I believe?
Correct.
Yeah, and the Main Street, I love Memphis, and I've watched it change over the years, and I really like the whole South Main and just and Main Street vibe much more than I do like Beale Street, which is just a big, fun, touristy hangout. But I bet 15 years ago it was less developed than it is today. Were you one of the early kind of put down a stake and say, hey, we're going to make Main Street work, or were there lots of them at that point?
Well, it was different, but it certainly was trending in the right direction, no question. There was a lot of plans for development, so we felt that the building had just so much potential and such a beautiful landmark.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the building itself was built in 1915, and it used to be it was one of the last silent picture houses in Memphis. And it's, the facade was completely restored by Jack Bells when he restored that entire block. Mm-hmm. And he was instrumental in the revitalization of downtown. He also revitalized the Peabody Hotel. And built the 100 Peabody Place, the tower. And so, I mean, there was a lot going on at the time. So it was, we just felt it was a good spot.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And I remember having brunch there, and there were some silent movies that were playing. So it just you kept that cool vibe. When it came to building the menu, did you just reach back to all the things that you'd done along the way from all of your stops? Because, it's certainly got it looks very much interested in being true to the South and true to Memphis. But it's a broad enough menu that everybody can find something on that menu that they want. Right.
Well, it's a big restaurant. It's a large operation. So we wanted to create something that was approachable. The downtown market is certainly locally supported, but there was pre-COVID quite a lot of tourism and convention business and hotel business, and we wanted to do a high quality product that was reasonably priced We wanted people to be able to come in and have a $10 flatbread and a glass of wine, and if that's all they wanted, or a good cheeseburger, but also offer some higher end stuff, so some steaks and some seafood, but it's I would never consider what we do to be a chef driven restaurant. We're certainly not doing anything that is culinarily on the edge by any means. What we do is we make really good food very simply, and we make with good product, and we buy the freshest and the best available produce that we can find.
Yeah,
and
it's definitely elevated. I mean, it's like you said, you do straightforward things, but you do them very well. And I think everybody considers it clearly one of the better restaurants in the city. And I looked through your main three menus, which are lunch, dinner, and brunch, and saw some. Again, there's a lot of crossover between the three. So if you're cool with it, I'm just going to run down a few items because I like to talk to folks about the food itself and not
Sure.
just how they got where they are. So your smoked salmon, you do that in-house, which obviously means you know how to do it and you can do it better than what you're going to procure. So is that just something you've always done?
Yeah. I mean, I've smoked salmon and trout and, tuna and whatever I can find. But it's not a cured and cold smoked salmon like you would with a lox or a Scottish smoked salmon, for instance, which is that sort of cold. It's a cold smoke, and you slice it quite thin. What we do is we do a hot smoke, so it's more like a barbecue smoke. We put a seasoning on it, and then we smoke it at about 220 for about 45 minutes. So it cooks it all the way through, and it imparts the smoke to it. So it's it's a different dish, but it's something that we've had on since the beginning, and something we're quite proud of.
Yeah. And, the next thing I'm going to ask about are your onion rings, because onion rings can be transcendent and wonderful, or they can be terrible, particularly if they come right out of a box or a bag and they're minced inside. Do you do your onion rings? I mean, they're just pretty straightforward too, just standard batter and fry them up. Are they thin cut or are they thicker cut?
They are huge. We buy super colossal onions. Those that's although they're not available now because of COVID. Again, the supply chain issues are a nightmare. But they are big. They would be the size of a small plate.
Okay.
And the batter is just a very simple tempura batter. It's very light and very airy. So we're quite well known for them. It's a big portion.
Yeah.
But it's
that sounds good. And then you do your flatbreads, which are, basically are like thin crust pizzas. That they look like a pretty major focus. And again, good price points. Like you said, if you want to come in and have one of those and a glass of wine, you're getting out of there for $20 and you're full. Has that been something you've done pretty much from the get-go too?
Well, over the years, I worked with an Italian chef some years ago, and he showed me how to make pizza dough. And so that dough is it's not quite a pizza. It's got a little whole wheat flour in it, and it doesn't bubble up like an Italian style, like that northern sort of Italian style chewy dough. It's a very thin and sort of crispy dough, and they're very popular for lunch, especially, and for dinners, and for groups and to go. And they're interesting.
Yeah, and they let people individualize what they want. You can get pretty much a lot of different things on it. I saw. So I grew up, my mother at, I believe it was Thanksgiving, maybe Christmas, would make Waldorf salad. But, I don't see those much anymore on menus. So tell us why you feature that. And I see it's called Old Post Office Waldorf salad. So tell us the story about that one.
Well, I mean, a Waldorf salad is the classic Waldorf is apples and walnuts and celery, sometimes chicken, mixed with mayonnaise. So it's it's not true to the original, but it does have apples, and we use barbecue walnuts, and we use a raspberry vinaigrette. So it's not a classic Waldorf salad, but it's sort of our take on it, and it's a very popular salad, and it does very well. And the Old Post Office it's from a restaurant that I was doing some consulting work with in Mississippi, called the Old Post Office, and they had a Waldorf salad on there, and I got the dressing recipe from there and changed it up a little bit, but as a sort of nod to them, I then called it the Old Post Office Waldorf. And I don't think that restaurant is open anymore, but it's been on the menu for so long that we just decided to keep it on there.
That's the heritage for sure. And I see that you've got 2 fillets and a strip, which to me are the ultimate cuts, although I also like ribeyes. 21 days of age, hand cut. So that's clearly something you take seriously. And steaks never go out of favor with diners. I mean, I'm sure you've got lots of people who come there for the steaks.
We do. I will. We buy whole meat, and then we butcher it in house. So we cut all our own steaks. I will stack our steak up against anything else in the city, frankly. We used to have a ribeye. Again, COVID has really put a crimp on a lot of issues, on a lot of supply chain stuff. And we used to have a ribeye on. I love a good ribeye, but they're just hard to find, frankly.
Right.
And incredibly expensive when you do find them. So we've had to reduce some of the menu items from pre-COVID times, basically to counteract that sort of the issue of availability.
Sure. So we hope people are listening to this episode of Heaping Spoonful for years, if not decades, into the future. But we're just to set the stage here. We're recording this episode in early October of 2021. So we're more than 18 months into what we no one could see lasting this long. Of course, there's reasons for that we won't get into. But all right, I'm going to take a short break, and I appreciate everybody listening to this episode with our guest, Patrick Reilly, the owner and chef of Majestic Grille in downtown Memphis, Tennessee. So hang on, everybody. We'll be right back.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Heaping Spoonful. We at Benny Keith Foods enjoy talking about the food scene almost as much as we enjoy providing the top quality ingredients that help restaurateurs and chefs across the Mid-South create their magic. Now let's dive even deeper into the culinary world with your host, Kelly Bass.
All right, welcome back to Heaping Spoonful and our conversation with Patrick Reilly. So let's get back to examining some of the items on the Majestic Grille menu. Barbecue ribs. So you're in Memphis, and there are legendary ribs all over town. I had some from a place called Payne's Barbecue when I was in town this weekend. Would seem to me to be a little intimidating to do ribs in Memphis, but you've been in Memphis a long time. Do you do yours much differently than others? I mean, of course, it's dry rub down the street at Rendezvous. What are your ribs like, and how are they different than what you find most places?
Yeah, it's a gutsy move to do ribs in Memphis. But I'm on a barbecue team. That's for the World Championship Barbecue Cooking Competition. I'm not the head cook of that team because there are guys in that team that can cook ribs a lot better than I can. But that being said, I've learned quite a bit about the art of cooking ribs and pork and shoulders. Payne's, by the way, is one of my favorite. Their pulled pork is ethereal, in my opinion. But we're not a barbecue restaurant, but again, when we're trying to appeal to a broad swath of especially tourists and business travelers, we felt that it was necessary to do a good quality barbecue rib product to fill that gap. And so we spent. We have a seasoning that we use, that we make, a dry rub that we rub them with. Then we smoke them, for about 5 or 6 hours at about 225. We let them steam for a while, then we glaze them. And then we sauce them, and we use a fabulous sauce that is made by a local manufacturer who also has a barbecue team. And it's called Porcosaurus. And they have, it's a fabulous name, fabulous bunch of guys too, and girls. But their sauce won first place in Memphis in May. And they've started manufacturing it, and then so they that's the sauce that we use. So it's been So wow. It's are there better ribs in Memphis? I would say yes, there are. But I'll stack ours up against anything else out there.
And it's also a really good point that a tourist sits down at a restaurant in Memphis, and you know what, they're thinking maybe ribs, and so you're letting them scratch that itch. I originally had a question that I took out, but there's a picture of you that I think your wife took at the barbecue contest, and you're with somebody famous, but I can't remember who it was. Do you know this one I'm talking about?
That was you. Oh gosh, I cannot remember his name. That's so funny.
I can't either. I don't remember if it was a sports star or an actor or what, but it was. I remember just going like, "Wow, that's cool." But of course, anybody who doesn't know about Memphis in May and the World Championship Barbecue Contest, I mean, placing anywhere in any category automatically elevates you to a whole different level. But winning first place for sauce, that's like a feather in the cap. That's hard to really explain to people, because competitive barbecue teams, I mean, it's like a whole cult almost unto itself, and it's really cool, the culture of it. I've got an old friend who's very involved in it, and it's a neat thing. So it's fun that you get to do that as well as have your restaurant, so that's cool. All right, back to the menu a little bit. Grilled cheese. I love your take on grilled cheese, and it says famous, which means it must be popular.
Well, it's our number one selling, one of our number one selling dishes on the menu, especially at the lunchtime. Just to back up though to the barbecue thing, our barbecue team made finals twice. So just for the record, we're not.
That's big. Yeah.
But so the grilled
not even
cheese
the best.
Is so it's aged cheddar, grilled with some thick cut smoked bacon. And tomatoes, and then the key to it all is the sauce. It's a Creole mustard mayonnaise sauce.
Sounds great. I'm already putting my next order in for when we come back to Memphis for dinner. So all of what we've talked about is also on your brunch menu, and I told you that's the meal that my wife and I had when we were there, and then of course you have a whole section of brunchy stuff, and I don't know who John D. is, but his breakfast sounds pretty perfect because it's eggs, bacon, cheese grits, which I adore, and biscuits. That's simple and straightforward, but I bet it's really, really good.
It is good, and John D. is a friend of ours who, before we had that dish on the menu, would come in and say, "Can you make this dish for me?" And we decided to put it on the menu, and we named it after him. Yeah.
Because I'm not a straight-up grits fan, just a blob on a plate, but you put some cheese and some butter in there, and they get pretty good pretty fast. Ricotta sounds like a really great addition to dress up pancakes. I wouldn't have thought of that myself. So tell us about those a little bit.
It's just a basic pancake mix, and then we just add some ricotta cheese into the batter itself, and it lightens it up and makes it just a little bit richer. And it's been very popular.
Yeah. So you do brunch on Saturday, and then on Sunday, that is the one meal that is served at Majestic Grille. I'm guessing brunch is one of your more popular and well-supported meals of the week, which you have twice, obviously. Sure, it is. Sundays are quite the day. Again, pre-COVID, we would open on Sunday nights, but due to mainly staffing issues, we've had to scale back just a little bit. I see that you also have a 3-course fixed price pre-theater meal. So and it looks really good. I having spent quite a bit of time in Europe, I love the set menus and the set price and make your choice of things, particularly in Paris or all over France. I guess there's enough, and I don't know if this is another COVID casualty, but I guess in normal times, which was like 2019 and before, there are enough productions at the Orpheum to make that worth your while, or I guess it must.
Yes. Well, as we speak today, in the Orpheum is starting its first Broadway show tomorrow, Tuesday. So it's Broadway is back in Memphis for the first time in a year and a half. So we're very excited about that. But the whole idea of the pre-theater menu came from, again, from my time in Ireland and London, where it's, very common. In fact, Inigo Jones was right around the corner from the Covent Garden theaters. So in the West End, so we did quite a lot of every day. There was shows, obviously, in London, like there is in Broadway. So we decided to take that sort of model, and as we were so close to the Orpheum, and then run that for all the Broadway shows, and it's been and very, very popular. It's an easy way for people to sort of budget ahead what they want to spend, and it's they know they can get in and out in an hour or so, and not be under the gun. So it's been very popular.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad to hear, because the Orpheum is a beautiful theater, and I went to many shows there when I was in college, and I've been to plenty since I've been back, or since then, and it's just down the way there from you. So to shift a little bit, Denny and you own a restaurant, and a very successful and popular restaurant, and clearly that's your day-to-day focus. But everything I've read about both of you says that you take a broader perspective and really work to support the restaurant industry and hold up restaurant careers as noble and worthy of people's respect and being an admirable career. Is that fair to say? I mean, that's something that looks like you guys take pretty seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly take the industry and the people who work in it seriously. We've had a lot of our employees have worked with us since the very beginning, and we have a lot of long-term people who've chosen this industry as a career, and certainly there's been a lot who've used it as a stepping stone and while they were in college, and we certainly support that. But there's certainly a place in this industry for people to make a career out of it, and we're very clear about training and development, and again, from my background in restaurants, where you did an apprenticeship and that was your a profession that you stayed with, and Denny's background is in the hotel industry with human resources and training and development. So yes, we do take this industry quite seriously and do try and grow it.
And, and I saw that you adopted the attitude and approach before the scourge that is COVID-19. But when the pandemic hit, it looks like you all took that to an amazing level. And I was reading about, through a program called Welcome to Memphis, there was grants available that I guess Denny was one of the leading forces in helping people who obviously were struggling because their jobs had been shut down. And so that must have been, although a painful time for everybody, at least you all were able to help folks out through that program.
We tried to do a little bit. We tried to marshal some forces to help sort of uplift some people. A lot of people who had fallen through the cracks for whatever reason were not able to get, unemployment benefits, or, we're just struggling. So the Welcome to Memphis program was, which is a hospitality sort of training program for frontline hospitality workers, sort of morphed into a support group for them.
Yeah, and which is really cool. And again, behind every great man, they say, is a great woman, and that certainly seems to be the case with you. And you obviously meeting your wife to be is another big part of why you wanted to stay in Memphis, but she's been much more front and center than the spouses of most acclaimed chefs and restaurateurs. So clearly, it still must make you proud. Again, Google answers all questions. And so I see that the Memphis Business Journal named Denny a superwoman in business in 2018 and a Power 100 most influential Memphian in both 2019 and 2021. So beyond the things like Welcome to Memphis, what has she done to get those kind of accolades? I mean, it looks like she's just out front and center trying to promote and help Memphis.
Well, I would, a slight correction, I would not say that she is behind me in any sense of the word. She is very much next to me or in front of me.
Right.
But she is yes, she's very much a promoter of Memphis, of downtown specifically, of our industry and the people in it. She is an immediate past president of the Downtown Memphis Commission, which is a growth engine for downtown and for to economic development. Sure. And she's very much involved in Welcome to Memphis, which is training, people in our industry, and very much just an integral part of our restaurant, but also of the industry and the city in which we call home.
Yeah, and I loved reading a thing from, I'm trying to remember, but it was a quote from her, and she said, we have a little saying coined by my husband and business partner, Patrick, that sort of sums up how we run our restaurant, the Majestic Grille. She says, we're not in the restaurant business, we're in the downtown Memphis business. So I think that's proof right there of both of your focus on growing the area through economic development. And it's a fabulous downtown. I mean, anybody that's, one thing that, anybody going east to west, a lot of times they're on Interstate 40 and they're coming right through Memphis. And so hop off there at the Front Street Riverfront Drive exit and go check out all these cool places because downtown Memphis is fabulous. But, again, she's gotten a ton of acclaim for great reasons, but so have you. I mean, you were Chef of the Year, Restaurateur of the Year. And I quote, a 2012 congressional proclamation issued by Congressman Steve Cohen honored Chef Reilly's leadership in the culinary and business communities of Memphis. And in 2019, Patrick was named Restaurateur of the Year. So that's pretty heady stuff. You got to be, I mean, you're probably blushing. I can't see you because we're on the phone together. But that's pretty heady stuff. I'm sure that you're proud of that.
It's yes, I am. Congressman Cohen has been a great leader for our industry and a great supporter of our industry, and certainly of not just for our district but for the country. And it was quite humbling. He actually came to that proclamation was on the occasion of my becoming a U.S. citizen, which. And he came. My wife threw me a surprise party for that event, and I was quite proud of that, frankly, more than anything else. Sure. And Congressman Cohen showed up, and yes, I was quite overwhelmed by that outpouring for sure. Yeah,
you probably know more about American government and civics than those of us who had it in ninth grade and never had to look back at it again. So, we've already talked about your, Denny, and your proactive campaign to help food service people after the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And like every restaurant in the country and maybe in the world almost, you had to shut down in March 2020. And it looks to me that you were closed for about a year. But when you moved back into engaging with the community and your fans, it wasn't as Majestic Grille. It was, is it Cucozza? American Italian, kind of a ghost concept virtual restaurant that you operated out of your kitchen. So talk about that. And did that last very long? I guess it's not still happening because you're back open as Majestic now.
Right. Yeah, we did. We shut down and we were trying to figure out what we could do that would sort of sustain, at least a core crew of key people. And the Kokoza concept is a concept that we've sort of had in development over the years. And it's a old school sort of American-Italian concept. And we felt it was more suitable for what was at the time the only thing available for us to do was to go and curbside and delivery.
Right.
And the Majestic food as, certainly some of it travels well, but in general, lasagna, eggplant parmesan, chicken parm, pasta dishes tend to travel and, do better in that sort of to-go delivery setting. So that's what we did. And the name is from Denny's grandfather. That was his original name from Italy. And the recipes are from various family members and from some chefs that I worked with over the years. But it's a very simple red sauce. We're not, as I say, we're not trying to evoke memories of a sunset in northern Italy. We're trying to evoke a strip mall in New Jersey.
I love that. That's great. Oh, what a way to close. So thanks so much for your time, Patrick, and for sharing your stories and Denny's stories with Heaping Spoonful listeners today. And continued good luck with Majestic Grille. And thanks to everybody out there listening to this today. We put up new episodes on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. So please keep an eye and an ear out for them, and then go back and check out some of the ones you've missed. So goodbye, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heaping Spoonful. On behalf of all of us at Benny Keith Foods, Mid-South Division, please know how much we love connecting you with the legends of the culinary scene and their unique stories. I look forward to the next time we can offer you another Heaping Spoonful.